go. We can talk anytime. I'm always ready. This is me on. This is
wow. Okay. Wait. Well, now I just gotta give an introduction to you. Let people live. Welcome back to the Youth Empowerment Podcast, featuring behavioral scientist and director of Microsoft Ventures, Matt Wallaert. Matt, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
So, now we first met at the Canadian Undergraduate Technology Conference back in the beginning of May this year.
I really appreciate that you didn't even bother to abbreviate that. You went with the full thing.
No, yeah.
CUCC. No. I actually had to, I was telling somebody about it yesterday, and I was trying to, I was like, it's Canadian. This is what I think it was.
Let's see, is that?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, the T is tech and the C is Canadian, but there's a U in there, and there's a C in there, and I don't know.
Well, at this conference, you gave a keynote speech about gender equity and inequality and the importance of becoming gender equals and the wage gap. After your keynote, I'd like to call everybody that came to you, like your kind of like little group. There's around 15 of us, and we sat at the table just sharing, asking you questions, sort of like a Q&A. And the experience was really powerful and made me want to be openly and supportive to feminism. And because before I wasn't very supportive openly, but did a lot personally.
Yeah, and that consciousness part is important, right? I mean, I think there's lots and lots of people who, if you ask them, are like, oh yeah, I absolutely support women. And it's probably true, but given the current state of affairs, it is important that we not just passively are aware of that, but actively vocal about I am a feminist, right? I think you see the same thing across racial lines. At least in my country, in the U.S. right now, we obviously are struggling very deeply with our sort of national racial identity, and it's not enough to sort of passively sit back and say, well, I'm not racist. That's right. Or I'm supportive. I recognize my racism. I'm supportive of these people, right? You have to actually actively say that. You need to go out and have the conversations and make active change, not just passage.
So, in case the peoples don't know who you are,
that would be all of you.
Who are you and what do you do?
So, as you mentioned, I'm a director at Microsoft. I work primarily with later stage startups that we're going to engage with more deeply on everything from sort of BD, M&A, co-selling, co-marketing, technology, good advice, everything we can do to help make a startup grow. And so it's been a really rewarding job. It's been a lot of fun. Before Microsoft, I built and sold 2 startups, and before that I was an academic. So I'm a social psychologist by training. I study something called JDM, judgment and decision making. So how do people make choices, and how do we construct environments that help them make different choices rather than passive way?
Awesome. And so on your website, I saw sort of a quote. You said, an N of 1 in statistics, a sample size of 1 has almost no validity. In life, this is less true. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, so when you're doing statistics, right, the larger your sample size, the
more accurate.
We'll try to think of it this way. Imagine your sample size was everyone on Earth.
Yeah.
Right? You could perfectly measure everyone on Earth. Well, then the experience, whatever you found out, would be perfectly predictably true, because it would be literally your sample size is as large as it could be. It's everyone. It's the entire group. And as you get smaller and smaller in sample size, what you find is, this might be true. Right? That is the standard of proof. So in psychology, we use p less than 0.05, which suggests that there is a 19 out of 20 chance that the result that we got is true. There's a 1 in 20 chance, which by the way is kind of scary. 1 in 20 it seems like a lot to me for scientific proof, but there's a 1 in 20 chance that this is not true. And so as you get smaller and smaller, the observations that you make about the world have a greater likelihood of being wrong, right? Of being an incorrect observation. At least when you look at it statistically. But when you look at human life, statistics are dumb, right? They are limited to the data that we give them, rows and columns. People are not so, right? We can draw inference, sometimes wrong inference, but sometimes right inference. And so I think that the individual experiences of people and the individual observations of people can be tremendously important to pushing forward science, pushing forward sort of our observation. I think that it encourages to run those new large sample experiments. And so I think the point of sort of n equals 1 is sort of that an individual person's observations, in this case mine, have validity and meaning and value, even though they may not be true, right? Even falsehoods like challenge us to think about things in really different ways. I mean, look at fiction, right? So I have, I'm sort of known for, I don't read nonfiction. I read primary source material from science and other places, and then I read fiction. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, I think that mostly people read the same nonfiction, and/or nonfiction in which they're experts about, and I'd rather get it from people, right? Like, let's say you really love farm-to-table economics, right? The economics of food chains. Like, I'd rather have a beer with you and you just explain to me what you know, and the science and the study and all of books you've read and things, because you can condense it to me, I don't need entire books, right? At least for the amount of understanding I need to get. Whereas fiction can't do that, right? Like, fiction, art is that which, when condensed, is diminished, right? You can't, theoretically, in a good book, tearing out even one page makes it less, not more, right? Makes it worse, not better, right? It's the job of editors to condense things to a place where, everything's one. And I just think that, fiction are books and lies, but they tell us tremendously interesting, important truth, right? In our grappling with fiction, in our grappling with story, in our grappling with the lies we tell, the made up pieces of the world, I think we actually find the things that are worth looking for in the actual world, in science, in places. And so I'm a great lover of fiction. I think that part of it for me was just sort of exploring the fact that even inaccurate, even sometimes made up anecdotes, I can make up a story, you have no idea, right? All of the examples I used in that talk could be total bullshit. None of them could be true. But if they made you think in a new way, or they got you to, sort of go in a new direction, aren't they worthwhile? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that important? Doesn't that have its own kind of validity?
I think it does. But the reason I have to say that everything that you did say was true is because I did research after that.
Well, that's the nice thing about the internet is a tremendous. One of the things that we underappreciate about the internet is its ability to triangulate data, right? Its ability to say, right, did Matt really sell us a lending trade? Was a real thing? Did a real thing happen?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's interesting.
Just to build off that, our generation, my generation, and people a little bit younger than me and just a little bit older are now growing up in technology.
Yeah.
We have all this technology around us and it's surrounding us. And so then, what are your thoughts on the youth now growing up with all this, and how do you think it will affect their aspirations / goals?
I have no idea. And I think that that's always true. I mean, I think it's really, really, really hard to predict, culture. I'm not a cultural forecaster. What I think is interesting is, human beings, one of our greatest strengths is our adaptability. And if I know it feels, I wrote a lot of very shitty poetry as a kid. But one of the lines, oh, absolutely. Yeah, doesn't every kid, doesn't every teenager, write some angsty, terrible shit? But the one line that I always remember from one of the poems that has stuck with me for all these years was, I only think it's special because it's happening to me. Right? And I think that, and I do thank you. Little do you know, there's an audience, and they're very impressed. That's a lie.
They're all snapping.
That's right, everybody's, So, I think it's tremendously easy to get situated in this moment and say, oh, hey, we have all this technology that other people didn't have, and this great explosive, this is, Peter Diamandis thinks we're at this futurist moment. And I don't really see it the same way. I look back, I talk to my family, I talk to other people a lot. Wasn't indoor plumbing also a revelation? Wasn't television also a revelation? Other people grew up with these mediums that we now are sort of, there are generations still alive that grew up without automobiles, right? Without the ability to travel long distances at will, right? That's crazy, man. They had to, literally, their world was a train mile. Well, if there was a train, right? If you live in Middle America, if you lived in, the Ozarks somewhere, look, your world was a, maybe 20 walkable mile circle around whatever your home base was, and that's like the vast majority of your entire experience. And that's in living memory, right? Like, we have people still alive for whom that was a reality. And so I think when you start to appreciate that technology has always been bringing new and amazing things to us. The only thing I think I can concretely say about people who are a little younger than me, who be your age, is that we don't know. And I think that'll be okay. And that'll be interesting, right? I grew up pre-internet. The internet really became mainstream in my sort of mid-teens, late teens.
Right.
And now I can't imagine living without it.
Right.
Just simple navigation stuff, right? Like, I didn't get a cell phone until I was out of college. And just the notion, I'm going to France and Italy, taking my family to France and Italy here in about a month. And just the notion that, like, I would have needed to, like, know where I was going ahead of time and get a road atlas and, like, paying way more attention. Now just, go there, right, do this, okay, great. Like, and here's the thing, here's why I don't know. Let me say this to you. Here's why I don't know. One of the primary functions of technology is it removes labor, particularly tedious labor, right? So I no longer have to, like, really analyze this map. I could just let the GPS do its thing. And so what it does is produce free time, right? And it doesn't seem like we have more free time, so I'll sort of talk to that. But it produces, non-staying alive based, like, time for labor. Okay. It is virtually impossible to predict what people will do with that. Like, people now spend an amazing amount of time on Facebook. Would I have previously said, oh yeah, when I save people a bunch of time by, like, making them not print out maps, are they gonna, like, share photos with each other? Like, who could have predicted that? There are some general principles that are interesting. We know, for example, that there's a really interesting paradox about people. On the one hand, you need to feel special. Like, you need to feel like an individual, unique, sort of person. At the same time, you need to feel connected to the group. And that's, in some ways, a tremendous paradox. Like, I sometimes call it, like, the snowflake and the blizzard effect. Like, how do I make you feel sort of unique and special and individual, but also sort of see that you're part of this greater and larger whole? And what we see is, as the time spent on just staying alive goes down, and the amount of money and other things, food becomes cheaper over time, the amount of time and money and effort and mental energy that we spend trying to resolve this sense of belonging, whether it's uniqueness or, like, groupness, goes up. And so I think if there's anything I could say, it is that your generation and the generations below you will spend an increasing amount of their time struggling with
identity.
Yeah, with identity. Like, what is your sort of place and part in this sort of both group and individual setting? And I think that's one of the reasons we're struggling with race. It's one of the reasons we're struggling with gender. It's one of the reasons that now is a time of change, because people are really grappling with that identity. If you look at, I want to say the rise of transsexuality, because it's difficult to know. It may always have been there, right? Difficult to know, but the rise of the conversation about
the awareness.
Yeah, gender questioning and sort of like, that's a tremendously interesting statement about identity, where now this thing that we think of as, or thought of as, like, corely biological, we are struggling with, well, maybe not, right? And, maybe we don't have to have these sort of core biological differences. Maybe we can sort of mold ourselves in the way that we want and self-express in these ways. William Gibson, I love encouraging people to read sci-fi. Not as much for, like, I enjoy reading sci-fi, but not so much as, like, a genre of pleasure, but as a, like, I think sci-fi writers really grapple with, because they grapple with the future, right, often, they grapple with what are the extensions of these. And I think William Gibson
was the author of
Neuromancer, which was sort of the first arguable predictor of the internet, right, sort of talking about, antecedents of the Matrix, like, if you read his book with a sort of critical lens, his books with a sort of critical lens, he grapples with this topic of identity very early, even throughout Neuromancer, which is one of his earlier novels. Like, he's talking about sort of, like, essentially the notion of temporary tattoos and the notion of body modification, and, like, people choosing to put in fangs or, dye their skin or, just do extreme things with their body to self-express, right? And it's so interesting to see how that's come about, right? Like, in my grandparents' generation. So there's not quite a full generation between you and I. So let's call them your grand-grandparents.
Yeah.
Like your great-grandparents, like tattoos were for whores and sailors. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the old people. Like that's it. Military, right? Like low lives and like barkers and sort of people of low character.
That was the time.
And now there are more people between the ages of 20 and 30, with 20 and 40, with tattoos than without tattoos. I don't have tattoos, and I'm actually in my 40s. That's insane, right? In like 3 generations, we went from like totally socially ostracized to in the minority, right? Self-expressing ink in your skin is in the minority. How on earth could I predict what's going to go on for your generation or the one below you? Like if we are so vehemently against tattoos 3 generations ago, and now they're commonplace. Who knows what you guys will challenge? Who knows what notions will no longer hold true? I think one of the most interesting things that's happened in the course of just my being an adult, and there's a big generation gap between your generation and mine, is notions of sex and nudity, right? Like just the tremendous frequency with which young people send naked pictures to each other. Like didn't exist in my generation, and like
And if it did, it was taboo.
That's right. If they did, it was taboo and secret, and even now maybe it's taboo and secret and shameful and shaming, but much less so, dramatically different. And so I just think it's so interesting that even within the space of this short generation between you and I, that sort of half generation stuff, things like that, sexuality's been sort of a core, like, yes, like this is this core principle thing that like, Freud would have said, like, the notion of sexting would have blown Freud's mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, I don't,
No way.
exactly. Like, I think that, his notion of repression, I think, is healthily challenged by these things. And so, I don't, Peter Diamant and other people take a tremendous amount of money to try and predict the future. I just like sitting back and enjoying it.
Grab some popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'm being a part of it. Like, I think that, whether it's, I did some work while I was at Bain on notions of revenge porn. So this notion of forcibly out, you and your girlfriend or boyfriend take, make a video of each other, and then you break up, and he or she's really angry, and you put it on the internet, and what are your rights, legal rights with respect to this photo? What are your emotional rights with respect to this photo? What is our job as a search engine? Like, do we take it down? Do we take it down? Like, how does that work? How do we help you express your rights?
Okay.
It's such an interesting, fascinating grappling we're doing with, like, who can own what? Who owns a naked image of your body, right? It's a consensual sex act between you and your partner. Do you co-own that? Like, what is their right to release it? What is your right to withhold it? Like, those are the things that your generation is going to grapple with in an amazing sort of way. And I think that that's like just great. Like, I'm actually really happy with that. Because I think you grappling with these things, whether fictional or non-fictional, an N of 1 or an N of a million, like, that's how we push forward. Hopefully healthily.
Yeah.
Sometimes not.
And I want to touch on a different topic, and we're going to come back to this. Coming back quite a bit.
This is your hour, bud.
It is. And so, in a talk, in your TEDx talk, you said that youth need to do work worth doing. And how do we do that?
I mean, I think that is the great thing about work worth doing is that it's highly individual. That everybody can find for themselves what that is. It's interesting that the quote is from Teddy Roosevelt, and it was in a speech to farmers. And so, I think in the context of that moment, he meant this sort of tillage or creation of crop cycle, which is now very far from what many of us do, right? Like, particularly in tech. We've become very disconnected from that particular motion. And yet, I think there are versions of work worth doing that haven't even been invented yet. But I do think one of the things, at least for me, to the extent that I can impose my own cultural values on something, I talk sometimes about entropic debt. So
What is that?
I'm gonna get there. Hold on. So you're familiar with entropy, right? This notion in physics and things that sort of the universe tends towards chaos, right? I think energy is wasted into things, and it's sort of true and sort of not true. Like as a metaphor, it works. Yeah, as a metaphor, it works. And so, if you think about the you and I being born, our mothers, took in tremendous amounts of food, put up with a lot of shit, right, to go through pregnancy, to create. My son was born at 7 pounds. My wife ate a lot more than 7 pounds worth of food, right? Like, there's this tremendous waste on behalf of the universe to create this highly organized, amazingly, beautiful thing that is my son. And what I sort of want to suggest to people is you owe the universe a bit of a debt, right? The universe spent a lot of it, it descended into entropy, right, in order to create you. And so you have some duty to pay that back by creating order, by, sort of, making things a little bit more, a little less chaotic. And look, there's nothing wrong with chaos. I sort of mean less chaotic in the negative sense of chaos. But I think that, like, to me, looking for work worth doing, I think is partially a process of just trying to find ways to sort of enrich that, the world. And whether it's the world around you and a small conversation between a person, to be kind, to be gentle, or it's the greater world and it's policy and it's leading companies are doing these other things in an ethical way. I think that's really interesting. And so for me, work worth doing, when my son asks me, how do you go find work worth doing? And I have this moment.
Did he ask you?
No, he's 9 months old. He can't ask me anything yet.
Okay, I was like,
I'm sure he will, because he'll have heard this quote a gajillion times.
Yeah.
I just said, a gajillion times. I'm hoping my answer will sort of be, well, that depends. You have to decide for yourself. Here's what I think it means to you. Right? And I think, that's a tremendously powerful thing is to say, you will find your own version of humans, rather than saying, here is the version. Right? Here is the truth. My wife criticizes me for not doing this very well. She often feels I'm about that once I've decided there's an absolute truth, I'm hard to move off it. And she's probably right. But at least in theory, I'd like to be able to say, hey, this is my version of truth, and that's your version of truth, and we can intelligently rub those two versions of truth against each other and maybe spark something.
Spark a generic truth between us.
Yeah, or at least in or a new truth that we agree on, or choose one of us.
True. Bad jokes. So as you said to me a little bit earlier, you talk to a lot of undergraduates and your speeches, and you do them actually for free, all of your speeches.
I do.
You say...
I have a no speaker fee policy.
Right, and that's something I found very interesting, very intriguing, and I wanted to thank you for that, for saying that.
I mean, look, principles, I'm sure there's a quote, and I don't know what it is, so I'll make one up, but sort of, the hungry man has no principles. I have the tremendous luxury of having sort of sold some startups and have a great lucrative job at Microsoft and have the ability to do these things. I don't begrudge people speaker fees. I just think that's not how I choose to make my money. The requirement's coming from academia, right? Academics, as a rule, don't tend to charge speaker fees, particularly to each other. They think that part of what it is to be in academia, part of being a professor is in some ways a very sweet gig, right? Like,
Sure.
Yeah, and so part of the way that you pay that back, part of the way you pay back your entropic debt is by, the free flow of knowledge. And I think that, well, it's interesting, look, let's look at like open source and open data. Isn't open speaking sort of somewhat like corollary parallel of that, right? Like, charging for speaking is like charging for an API.
Right.
Right? And so when should you charge for speaking? Well, in the same circumstances, you should charge for an API where it costs you something to get in there and it's proprietary. But most of what I talk about is public science, stuff that is drawn from social psychology. It's not my work, it's other people's work, right? I have an experience in many cases talking about these experiments. And the other piece of that is, I let people can pay for travel and lodging in meetings, right? So maybe I'm a break-even API, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm trying not to cost myself too much money, although I do some things in speak. But I think that's important.
And so, what are 2 to 3 big lessons you would want to teach youth, undergraduates, and graduates? Like if you had to,
You don't have to have it figured out. That's a that's a huge point to me. I mean, I think that like as the options in the world multiply, there's so many jobs and things, and everybody, I think, and this has been true. People are under pressure. I think people haven't figured out too early, but it remains a constant battle for us. You don't have to figure it out, and you don't have to know. And if you change your mind's okay. Maybe that's the better lesson. Change your mind's okay. Right? Like, I mean, this is why I'm so interested in bridge, right, as a topic. It's okay to change your mind, right? You can consent in that moment and then not feel okay with it later. And I would hope the world is forgiving enough to allow for that. Right? What an awful world it would be if we said to you, whatever you want to be when you're 10, that's what you have to be. That you are. We don't allow any flexibility in that. And so we can get into notions of like, legality about changing your mind about revenge porn and who really owns the rights and blah blah blah. But in a empathetic, reasonable world, don't we want to allow people to change their mind? Right? Really bad things would happen when we insist that people aren't allowed to do that. The Vietnam War is a great example, right? Like where we're like, to stop doing what we're doing is to admit that we were wrong, and so we're just gonna keep on going. Yeah, we're just gonna keep throwing young men into this meat grinder and see what happens. Like, what an awful result. So, why do we encourage young people to basically fight their own Vietnam wars, right? Why do we say to them that, the thing that you sunk effort in has to be the thing? Now, look, you want some healthy tension, and you don't want people changing their mind every day and every second, right? You want people to be able to see commitments and other things. But I do think that, like, it is important, at least to me, that young people understand that, like, look at my own career path. I always sort of point out, when people ask me to predict the future, I can't even predict my own future. But if you said to me, I'm 34 now, so let's take me at 19. If you said to me at 19, hey Matt, you're gonna leave academia, you're gonna sell some startups, and you're gonna work for the biggest tech company in the world, I would have been like, okay, right? Like, I seem to be going to grad school and becoming a professor, but whatever. Like, I think that's so interesting. Like, I can't, I live in the science of prediction. I live in the science of sort of judgment and decision making, and I can't predict my own stuff. So why on earth should we reasonably expect any one person to know what they want to do? I think that I always encourage people to think about 2-year stints, right? Try and find a job, a life, a whatever that's going to make you happy, really happy. You can throw yourself into with gusto for the next 2 years, and then stop and say, hey, am I doing the right thing? Do I want to keep doing this? Should I do something different? I think that you want to show commitment, but I think that you want to think in short enough sprints that you can recognize when things have really changed for you. And so I try to think in 2-year stints, and that's been successful for me. And maybe it's shorter or longer, and who knows if that's the right length of time. But allowing yourself the freedom to change your mind. I think. So divorce rates are a great example, right? Like, they're taken as negative, and they have some negative properties to them. But like, they also, like, shouldn't we let people change their mind? Like, as they grow in relationships and find out that, like, do I want people to change their mind every second? No, there's some negative effects to that. But I think that, we have to recognize that people change, and I think we shouldn't force people to stay in jobs, countries, relationships. I just think that throughout history, that's been a recipe for disaster.
So that's lesson number 1.
Yeah. So that's bad. Maybe that's many lessons.
I'd say there's a lot.
There's a lot in there.
Lesson.
All right. So you want more lessons? I only have a little tiny draft of. I'm only 34. What do I know?
Well, you know a lot.
I may change my mind 2 years from now.
We'll have to come back and get you on the show again.
There you go. We'll do it again. I mean, that's the real answer to anything. It's a continuing conversation, right? It's never once. It's always. That's right.
Forever. Back full circle.
Yeah, we gotta learn new things.
Yeah.
I gotta interview you next. Better watch. We'll start asking you questions here.
Oh.
Other things that are really, I think are important to me about youthfulness is reminding them to enjoy it. And I know this. I mean, things become trite. because they're repeated often, because they're true. And I think it really, who among us, right? Let's talk about your audience and your age. Like, wouldn't you go back knowing what you know and do high school kind of differently?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So
I apply myself a lot more.
Yeah, and so like, and in whatever direction that goes. I mean, maybe for me it was, I graduated from college, one of the top colleges in the U.S. in 3 years.
Wow.
Because it was really expensive, and I come from a first generation family, and I really had this allergy to debt, and I worked my ass off. Like I worked, I think I worked every job there was on campus, right? Like I just,
Hard worker.
Anything I could get my hands on, man. I was, cleaning up after events. I was, running the IT department. Like anything I could find, I was doing it. And so I sacrificed a lot of, I look at a lot of my friends who have carried forward those college relationships, and I didn't go to parties. I didn't have the same college experience that they did. And look, obviously the person who says, well, I would have done it differently is the person who went through it. Right? And I'm sure if I had done something different, I would also go back and correct that. But I do think that, like, whether it's working harder or working less, it's important to draw from our past, rather than judging ourselves for our pasts, to instead look at them without judgment, without shaming, and to recognize that we can do something different. I mean, shame is one of the, shame is a mind killer. I mean, it's just, so many things are done badly in the attempts to avoid shame. And I think that, one of the things psychology really gave me that's been tremendously helpful to me in my life is, in order to run the experiments that I want to run, I had to get subjects. And I burned through the subject pool in a small college very quickly. And so, I did experiments where I stood in 30th Street Station. It's a beautiful train station, Amtrak station in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. I stood in 30th Street Station for days just trying to get people to fill out surveys.
Really?
And getting told no, and, having to be rude. And just this process of, losing that shame and that fear of approaching people and asking, hey, would you mind filling this out for a survey, for a study? Letting go of that shame was, that embarrassment, that fear of rejection was so interesting and freeing. And if there's anything I'm consciously working on these days, it's being more embracing of the things, being more embracing of my words, being more embracing of the places where I don't get it right, and trying to correct that without shaming myself, right? You can still recognize it's wrong and bad and want to change it without sort of making yourself sick at heart over it. Maybe the more scientific way to put it is there's this great work on attribution theory, Carol Dweck and others, that sort of talk about how do we, when we reflect on things that happen in the world, how do we interpret them, right? So for example, let's say you fail a test. Does that mean, hey, you failed this test, or does it mean you fail all tests? What's the conclusion you draw from that, right? Is it singular or universal?
And it's a mystery or something.
Yeah, exactly. And is it something about, they sort of draw these distinctions, right? So is it universal versus sort of singular? Is it about something core to you, or is it about the environment, right? So unhealthily, people are like, well, I failed the test, and that means I'm stupid. Healthily, it's like, oh, I failed a test, which means I didn't study enough, or I didn't get it right, or I didn't sleep, and I need to get a tutor next time, and I need to do these things that are changeable, rather than sort of blame yourself in this fixed, universal, I failed a test, and so that means I'm stupid, and I'm stupid about every subject, and I'll be stupid forever, right? Versus, I failed this test, and that means I didn't prep in the right way, right? It's about about my actions and not something core to me, so it's changeable, right? It's about this test and not all tests, right? It's not I'm stupid in every subject just because I failed this math test doesn't mean I'm going to fail the English test tomorrow, and it's not, and it's temporary. It's a state I can change. It doesn't mean I'll fail every math test for the rest of the time. It was just this. And it's so easy, particularly when you're young, I think, to get in this place where you look at your mistakes and you just think it means you're screwed.
Damn, I suck.
Yeah, I suck. Oh, God, I suck. And
damn, I should quit.
And I suck forever, and I suck in every way, and it's, it goes...
I've had that feeling, and I'm sure all my friends have.
It's like tea-suckiness, right? It's both deep and wide, right? It means that I really suck at this, and I suck across everything. And it just isn't, right? If anything, it's a period suckiness, right? It's at somewhere in the middle of a sentence, there's a dot, but it's, there's line on both sides, and it goes up and it goes down. And I think that, giving ourselves permission to to have failed at something and not be a failure is so important, especially when you're young, because there's so much time left to change it, right? If you see yourself as a failure at 90, well, there's not that much time left to change it. But when you're young, there's so much control you can exert over the world, you know, like not happy with the way that you did something in a relationship, you can change that. Like you can do it differently this time. You have all of these chances stretching out in front of you.
Wow. I think that qualifies as 2 lessons right there.
There's at least 2 in there somewhere.
And so that, wow. By the way, you're a very good speaker. I'm kind of very just absorbing it.
Well, it's nice to have a conversation. You know, I think conversations we learn so much from each other when we talk.
Yeah. You mentioned that you sold a few successful startups. Now, I know that right now we're kind of, or this is what I've heard, let me put it like that, from people like Gary Vaynerchuk, that we're kind of in this entrepreneurship bubble. That entrepreneurship is so glorified by the media, having shows like Silicon Valley, having shows like of all these people just becoming big successes. Do you? Well, let me should youth go and pursue entrepreneurship, and if they are struggling with taking the leap to entrepreneurship, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Wow. Okay, that's another good question. So, you know, I grew up in startups at a time when entrepreneurship was not sexy.
Yep.
Right. I often tell the story that, you know, sort of during my first startup, Thrive, there was a Halloween party every year that was thrown by the LimeWire guys, and it was on the top sort of couple floors of the tower building. And you could pretty much fit the majority, like everybody that was kind of everybody in tech, you could fit in this Halloween party on like 2 floors of the building, right? And now, you know, having almost 10 years later, now that I've come back to New York, like
you need the Metrotron.
Yeah, exactly. You just, you know, I don't know how many people there are, but it's not enough that you can fit them on 2 floors of the building.
No.
And so I don't like to sort of predict bubbles or not bubbles. I do think there are some things that we need to learn from the current environment. One is that you don't have to be an entrepreneur. It's not the only, like, you know, I think one of the downsides of MBA programs right now is that they're churning out people and they're saying you have to be an entrepreneur. This is the only path forward. And I just don't think that's true, right? I think we need people across the spectrum. You know, another piece is that, like, you can be entrepreneurial without being the founder of a startup. You can join startups.
You can have entrepreneurial tendencies.
That's right, and you don't have to be CEO. Like, you don't even have to have a C in your title, right? You can be an entrepreneurial engineer without, like, taking a lead. You know, the sort of method of entrepreneurship, and the sort of spirit of entrepreneurship, don't have to be limited to this very singular, intense, particular kind of, well, I've got to go find something. And so, you know, I think I don't push people towards entrepreneurism. I don't push them away from entrepreneurism. I sort of say, you know, if it's something you want to do, go get exposure to it and see if it's something you really want to do, right? And you know, I'm also not. There is this whole fail fast mentality in entrepreneurship right now that I think is maybe misinterpreted. Which is, if you're going to fail, you want to fail fast, right? Failing over really long periods of time can be very painful. But that doesn't mean that, like, the point is failure, right? Like, you know, succeeding and struggling,
Sweat and, you know, just putting it in.
Struggle is okay. I mean, it's okay to struggle with things. Like, it kind of goes back to where you don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to have all the right answers, right? Your first idea doesn't have to be the right one. Like, and the more that you can, when you do know it's the right thing, though, you need to really run in the direction. I often talk about orienteering, which is one of these sports that, like, nobody, if you don't live in a really rural place, nobody knows this sport. I'm a country boy. No one knows this sport. Orienteering, all right? So orienteering, it's a race. It's a timed race, but it's not like a road race where, like, you and I have a path and we're all running in a big group. Basically, you are at point B. There's an arbitrary point. It's point A. There's an arbitrary point B.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, somewhere across the river and over a mountain, and there's point B, and there's no real road or path or trail.
Just whoever gets there.
Yeah, it's, you know, you'll get there. and you're given a map and a compass, and you sort of like try and get to B as fast as you can. And the way,
Did you win?
I mean, I'm slow and terrible at
Oh.
sports. It doesn't matter if I win. It's not about winning, it's the sport.
Right.
And so I also am a terrible runner, so I don't really love that aspect of orienteering. But the way that it sort of works is the way that you practice orienteering, the way that you sort of do this is, you can't even see point B. So what you do is you kind of take a sighting on where you think point B is going to be with your compass and your map, and then you run as hard as you can in that direction until you're not really sure you're running in the right direction anymore, and then you stop and you take another sighting, and then you run in that direction instead, and so you make this sort of zigzagging path of, high speed with decreasing certainty, and then you hit a point where you're not certain anymore, and then you take a new path, and you kind of, okay, certain, okay, now I'm uncertain again, I gotta stop. And I think life is like that, right? You wanna, when you think you know the right answer, you wanna sprint. You wanna run as hard as you can in that direction. You wanna look around enough to make sure you don't trip over or you die, but you wanna kind of run. And then, but being aware of your uncertainty and stopping and saying, hey, I'm uncertain about this thing. I need to stop. I need to take a look around and make sure I'm doing the right thing. We need to be aware of that. And so, if we go back to our Vietnam example, we had some certainty going in, but how amazing would it have been if we were certain, and then as soon as we had the inkling of uncertainty, we stopped and said, all right,
do we continue to sprint?
I'm gonna grapple with this thing a little bit, rather than sort of just being well, we're already doing it, so we're gonna keep doing it, right? And I think that it's that sprinting forward. And so I think as I encourage people away or towards entrepreneurship, you want to bet, you want to make bets, right? It's a risky proposition, but you don't want to spend all the bullets in your gun, in the first second of the gunfight, right?
That's
you've only got a couple, Avi Karnani, my co-founder and good friend, he was sort of is this worth spending a bullet on? Right? We've only got so many, we can only make so many mistakes. Is this worth taking a flyer on? And sometimes it is, and you have to make those risks, but it's about the intelligent application of risk. It's about the intelligent use of the bullets that you have.
So bringing it full circle before I ask the final couple of questions, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been so much fun. You can't see where we are, but we're sitting on the top of this really interesting little coffee shop.
Yeah.
And because of the Canadian strike, we have no mic, and so we're working with a computer overlaid over videos. We're just having a lot of fun.
It's really chill, yeah.
It's very nice.
But I also wanted to say thank you for not only coming on the show, but thank you for inspiring me to do more, to fire a bullet, to identify, to become more self-aware, and have that sort of identity self-awareness of where I want to be and what I am now, what I'm doing to achieve that.
Well, look, I think that I'm glad you got fired up by the things that I said, but I have to say, it's totally self-serving. In the sense that, we talked earlier about sort of entropic debt, right? If I can get you a little fired up, I'm paying off my entropic debt, right? It's not, maybe that's the answer about entrepreneurship, not having to be the founder, not having to be the CEO is, there is an amazing amount of power in just empowering and inspiring others and allowing other people to do things. My favorite services and my favorite sort of startups and things are often about, we talked earlier about as the amount of time you have to spend just staying alive goes down, people do tremendously interesting things with this new time that we free up. And what that means is all of the people that, the Chinese laundry that, automates clothing so you don't have to think about it, is really a part of your innovation, right? They are creating that opportunity and that space for innovation by automating something that would suck up time, and it creates this interdependence on each other. Your entrepreneurship, your startup would fall apart if you had to do absolutely everything for yourself, right? Nobody can do everything for themselves, right? If you had to actually go grow your own food, you're not gonna start Google. And so what that means is that farmer empowers, farmers are responsible for Google, right?
in a way.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, in this stepwise thing, right? If Sergey's growing his own food, he's not creating Google, so anybody that grows food, he's in their own way part of that creation story, right? But we go back to our pre-car thing, right? The ability for me to sit here and talk with you is dependent upon a plane and a bunch of people that got that plane to places, and a system of taxis and trains and other things that got us here, and somebody that built this building. We're all incredibly interconnected, and so maybe that, going back to Gary's point, maybe the bubble of entrepreneurship, maybe the problem with the current story is about entrepreneurship is it's so focused on a solo hero. Often, by the way, the white male solo hero.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's this notion that Zuck creates it from scratch, from whole cloth. His genius is responsible. Yeah, Bill or Bill Gates. Any of the sort of people that we put on pedestals about the things that they created. And Bill's an amazing individual, and I don't think that I'm in no way casting aspersions on his genius. Instead, what I'm suggesting is, we are all really, really, really in this together. We are all really, really, really connected. It's one of the things I actually love about the entrepreneurial scene in New York, as opposed to the Valley. There's this old Irish joke, we only fight each other because we can't find anybody better to fight, right? And if you look at the Valley, just because 25% of the people are employed by tech, because they are far and away the biggest industry, they just eat each other alive, right? It's fiercely competitive. People do really scummy things because they're on top and they can only fight each other. Where in New York, finance will always be bigger, probably at least in my lifetime. Media will be bigger. Fashion will be bigger. It's the headquarters of other kinds of industries. And so because we're not the biggest industry, people are amazingly collaborative. I've seen, competitive startups introduce each other to investors.
Really?
Yeah. Just amazing, wonderful kinds of collaboration. And again, I think it's because they're not on top. We're not the biggest. We're not the baddest. And so I think every time that we can see how connected we are, when we can see the blizzard and not just focus on the snowflake, I think that unlocks tremendous abilities to understand greater ideas about what work is worth doing. Right? And the way that, farmers contribute to technology and technology owes it to them to contribute back, right? I get very frustrated. Not one but two startups got funded with just an amazing amount of money in San Francisco to do on-demand valet parking. And I'm just like, okay, I get why this is solving a problem for some people.
Yeah.
But man, is it not solving a problem for my mom? Right? I'm a first-generation college kid. I look at my parents and sort of say, you're not solving problems for my parents. You might be doing something, right? If you're not solving if you're not doing something in Silicon Valley that affects farmers in Iowa, they affected you, they grew your food.
Right.
You better be doing something that echoes back. And maybe that for me is the bubble of entrepreneurship, is this notion of only working on these problems that affect the ultra rich and have disposable income. I'm much more interested in the unexotic, sort of unsexy, how do I just make things incrementally better for people that I'll never meet somewhere in Iowa.
So, final few questions here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, I'll start with this one. It's the end of your life. All right.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I know.
Oh God! Existential crisis.
It's 100 plus years from now, maybe 150, the way technology is going.
Okay.
And
I don't want to live that long. But okay.
Everything you've created is gone. All the Microsoft Ventures that you've done, all the poetry,
Good.
is gone.
Good.
And everything that has made you is gone, except all your accomplishments.
Okay.
And at this time, all your families all around you, your great-great-grandkids, and your grandkids,
Okay.
and your son is with you, and they're sitting around you, and they say, Matt, there's nothing to remember you by. Can you write, here's a piece of pen and a paper. Can you write down 3 truths, 3 things that you know to be true about life? What do you write?
And I write down, this is a tremendously interesting question. there's all these. I would love to have something pithy and articulate to say right now, right? Like, you know, just to rattle
yeah.
off. Look, you know, I think that like I'm not as my personal legacy is not as interesting to me. What I remember is, you know, I used Nabokov a lot. I love Nabokov.
What
Like the writer Nabokov.
Sorry.
Like no. Sorry, I should have added some context. So tremendously, you know, everybody remembers him for Lolita, right? This novel that, like, you know, is now a word that's entered our vernacular. It means its own independent thing. You know, they remember this sort of novel. And I have to say, like, to me, his short stories are way better. Right? I think he had just better works. And it's really important to me because it reminds me that, you know, the thing that you're remembered for may not be your greatest sort of work. Right? It will, you know, history latches on to whatever it sort of latches on to. And that doesn't lessen the writing of the short stories. It doesn't lessen your greater work. Right? And so I don't think I know what my greater work is going to be. I do, you know, I am always trying to work myself out of a job. You know, if you look at something like Get Raised, like, I don't want to have to be a feminist forever. Okay? Because ideally we reach equity and I can move on to other things and I don't have to worry about these problems anymore. Like, if there was no gender wage gap, we wouldn't need Get Raised, and I'd be happy for it to die. Right? Now I'm trying to work things until they die. Right? Which is not, I think, the entrepreneur. I mean, that goes back to the sort of like bubble entrepreneurial thing. I don't think part of the problem, I think, is that people always want to get more of your attention. Right? Facebook wants more of your time, more of your attention, and
It's a battle for
it's a battle for attention. And I think that, like, what if the converse was true? What if instead of doing that, what if I tried to give you exactly the same amount of value, just less attention? Right? I'm not going to make your clothes any cleaner. Right? I'm just going to I'll make you think about cleaning the class. Wouldn't that be interesting? And so I really like this notion of, like, how do we build things that are not trying to take more from you, but trying to take less from you and trying to provide the same value. And so, you know, if I think about what legacy I would like to leave, I hope a lot of it is invisible. I hope a lot of it is transient. I hope a lot of problems just get fixed and then we move on, right? Like, it's the precise opposite of, and I'm not just saying on Facebook, I think what that, you know, what people goes over there is interesting and amazing. But I think for me, I hope that the stuff that I build is transient. It does go away. And I hope all of my accomplishments aren't blown away by being the new normal. Right? If I could shift gender equity to be the normal and nobody remembers that it was ever a problem, isn't that the greatest kind of legacy? This sort of invisible, like, you know, isn't that the amazing legacy?
That would be.
And there, so you know, and I look at throughout history. I mean, I think that, like, there are these people who have helped shift the new norm. That's the good thing. Is that helpful? Does that answer your question, sort of? I don't know that I could write that down on one piece of paper as I'm dying.
Well, it does. And so,
from dust into dust. I mean,
you have like you said earlier, you have you said 9 month.
I have a 9-month-old.
9-month-old
Bear.
Bear. And I asked you this question back when I first met you. I said, the question was, after like all of these experience so far about Get Raised and gender equity and now identity, and then work worth doing. When your son asks you, what do you want to teach your son? Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, look, I mean, I think it probably won't be anything he asks me. Like, you know, if I think about learning from my own parents, sure, there were moments where I explicitly asked them their opinion about something, but what we really learned is we learn by observation.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So I think the important part about gender equity, for example, will not be what I tell my son about gender equity, will be how I treat him. Right? Like, you know, it will be setting a good example. And I fail at that all the time. My wife and I were talking about this all the time. But she was like, I don't understand how you can be such a massive feminist in the world and such an asshole to me. And you know, it's something I struggle with. I mean, it is hard to do you know, it is always easier to talk the talk than to walk the walk. And I think that, like, the challenge, the hard part will be, can I show my son by example what I believe? Right? Can I make my beliefs manifest in my behaviors? You know, in psychology, there's a great book I love by Tim Wilson, who's a professor down at I want to say Maryland. And he borrowed the title from Nietzsche. He sort of says the title "Strangers to Ourselves," and he's talking about sort of how little conscious access we actually have to our own preferences. Like, you know, I always use my college roommate as an example. Who, if you asked him who he wants to date, he would always describe Barbie. He would describe like this big guy. He would describe sort of like a Baywatch American blonde, and yet in 20 years that I've known him, 15 years that I've known him, he dates nothing but small Asian women, right? And I'm like, look, man, like your beliefs about what you want in the world and what your behaviors are, like, don't line up, and like we should change your beliefs. The best access we can have to our own beliefs is to look at our behaviors and try and make those line up. And I think that the tendency is for beliefs to change to match behaviors, and sometimes behaviors have to change to match beliefs. We have to try and live up to our own ideals. And on your deathbed, you will always have failed at that. You will always have failed at that. But core to our earlier discussion about what you do when you fail. Can you bounce back from it? Can you do it better the next time? Can I do better to my wife? Honey, I love you. Like, can I do better with regard to my wife every day? Right? When I don't live up to my ideals, can she do better to me? That's such an interesting and important part of you guys.
And so last question, Matt.
Okay.
What is your definition of empowerment? This is the What is Empowerment show. So.
What is my definition of empowerment?
Yes.
Definition of empowerment. So I think I'm going to go contra what I think most people sort of push on empowerment. And it actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That you thank me for inspiring. And I think often when we talk about empowerment, it is this inspirational, pushing, what we talk about behavior change, promoting pressure thing, right? It's about, how do people, push other people into doing things. And I think empowerment for me and empowerment work is mostly about inhibiting pressure. It's about what can we do to make broad general tools, or very specific tools, that allow people to be creative in the ways that they want to be creative. This interview that we're doing now involves a computer and a phone. Yeah. Like, the thing that's marvelous for me about a phone is not that it pushes you to do something, but that it enables you to do many of the things you already want to do. Right? Yeah. My interest in empowerment is not about trying to convince you to do something you don't want to do. It's about making it possible for you to do the things you do want to do. Rapidly and with low cost. Right? If we go back to it's a great summation question, right? We're going to wrap it all up. Yeah. This is all for a circle, right? If we go back to you need to be able to change your mind, you need to be able to do things with low effort, right? Like, if what we need is for you to be able to change your mind over time, in order to make different choices and try different things, I need to make the cost of trying things low. And so as I remove those inhibiting pressures, as I give you a phone that allows you to do many different kinds of experiments and things in the world, that's really powerful. Right? It's that notion of allowing you to try as many things as possible with as low cost as possible, and then helping you when you want to go deep. So for me, empowerment is really about barrier removal. It's barrier removal in two ways. It's barrier removal to trying things, and it's barrier removal to, once you've decided on something, really allowing you to run at top speed.
Wow. Matt, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It was so much fun, and it's been really enjoyable to engage with you. I hope we do get to do it again. The next time I think I should get to.
Oh, okay, maybe.
And thank you for all your time. I know this is a very long, extensive interview, and I hope it helps you go out into the world and do something.
Awesome.